chapter number 8. And we started this message 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're going to finish it. Oh, thank you, Lee. And let me find my little clicker. John chapter 8 in our Bibles, and I think it's in chapter 20 in your books. And we're going to finish this up. Lee, did you get to the right slide? 55, I think, is what it was. Yeah, keep going. You got get up to lesson 20. We'll get there. So just to recap, because it's been a while since we've been in the book of John. But last week we preached something different. I think the week before, a couple weeks before, I think Brother Joe preached because of sickness, and then Brother Joe, it was his turn to preach. So and then I called out and made him do it twice. But that's all right, because he got me back. I had to cover for him once, didn't I? You were out sick one week, Brother Joe, I think, weren't you? I hope he was. So, oh, yeah. So it all works out. But I do appreciate Brother Joe stepping in at least once a month preaching. That does, as a preacher, it takes some burden off, takes some stress off. And Brother Joe loves preaching, and I enjoy hearing him. And I don't know about y'all, I think his preaching's gotten better as he's gone along. And I might just have to start preaching once a month, let him do 3 times a month. But it's been good. And I know the Galatians study has been good. And it's almost like we're learning Galatians for the first time, because there's a lot of information he's pulling out that, just from reading. Galatians is packed full of stuff. You could preach on Galatians for a year straight and probably still not get everything covered. Same with the book of John. There's a lot in here too. But John chapter 8, we're going to jump back in there. And then at the end of the service, we'll shut off the live stream. I want to do something a little different today. And then we're going to have a wedding. Not a shotgun wedding. If we need the shotgun, Deanna? If we need to, Russ can go grab one. And there we go. We'll make sure that happens today. So just to recap a little bit, John chapter number 8. We started this several weeks ago. In fact, I had to go on YouTube this morning and go back a few weeks to see where I ended. I'm like Brother Joe, I didn't mark where I stopped. So I watched my own sermon, or 2 of them this morning, and I fast-forwarded through the boring parts. But I got there. It mostly was boring parts. But we got to the good part. So we're going to be finishing up this morning. We were talking about, remember in chapter 7, the Feast of the Tabernacles. We got into that several weeks ago. And then we talked about Christ dividing people. And then Christ, this is now after the Feast of the Tabernacles. And what happened, if you remember from several weeks ago again, he leaves for a short time. He comes back to the temple, back to the tabernacle, or back to the temple after the Feast of the Tabernacle. And he gets cornered, literally cornered by the Pharisees. And they start pressing him on some things. And Christ very easily and with great foreknowledge dismantled their arguments and put them to shame. The first thing that was brought to him was the woman caught in adultery. We went through that and how he shut that down very quickly and showed mercy. And we didn't dig too far into that story. We'll come back another day and dig into that story further. But then he exposed the Pharisees for some things. And if you have your books, you have them in there, I'm sure. Make sure I get the right one. He started showing some of their ignorance. And I think there's 7, 8, 9 of them, however many of them. He talked about their ignorance. And I think we got to go one more. Lee, click on that screen for me so I can change the channel here. Am I on? I'm off, that's why. There we go. So he started dealing with some of the ignorant things that the Pharisees were saying. They were trying to corner him. They were trying to come up with a reason to arrest him. And we talked about how the Romans were involved and things like that. We talked about they were ignorant of his truth, his father, his destiny, and let's see what else. His identity. They were ignorant of their own history, even though these were supposed to be the scholars. And then the last one we talked about, I believe, was number 6, the ignorance of his character. And let's go a little bit further. Their history, his character. There it is. I think we ended on character. Did we not? Is that history. We ended on history? Oh, great. So I'm not even ready now. So I'm just kidding. Okay, we ended up with our history. That's right. I did mark it this morning. And we talked about how the last thing that we talked about, this wasn't the end of the conversation, but they were trying to corner him And he was talking about the verse that said, you know, if you believe in me, you'll be free. And he was using that in a term of, being enslaved or being persecuted or being free. And they were ignorant of their history, of how God used other countries to judge Israel. They were in slavery or in bondage. And they refused to acknowledge the place they were in at the time. They were under Roman rule. And they didn't want to really acknowledge that either. And Christ was saying, if you follow after me, believe in me, you'll be free indeed. Now, he was not talking necessarily in a physical sense, because they were still going to be under Roman rule. He was talking about being free of the burden of sin and the burden of guilt that you have to carry. Because once you're saved, you put your faith and trust in Christ, he takes that burden off. That's one less thing we have to worry about. This week was a week we paid off some bills. We had some big bills we had to pay, and I hated spending the money, but afterwards it felt good to tick some things off the list. And we got them paid off. That was was not a good feeling when I saw it leaving the bank account faster than it was going in. But it did feel like we accomplished something at the end of the week. We got bills paid, we got some things done, and it's just one thing we were able to take off the list, and that was great. Jesus is kind of dismantling these Pharisees the same way. He's one by one breaking down their accusations, their arguments, dismantling them, tearing them apart. But he knows also his time is short. He does not have much time left. This is just prior to him being arrested. And the rest of the book of John will deal with those things. He's got a few more things to do, though, before that happens. So we're caught up now to where we're at on point number 6, the ignorance of his character. And that starts in verse 48 of John chapter number 8. And then he says in verse 48, then answered the Jews and said unto him, say we not well that thou art a Samaritan and hast a devil? And this is a very serious accusation. Remember the Samaritans. The Samaritans and Jews, there was a hatred there between the two. Christ spent 2 days with the Samaritans. Remember the woman at the well? And so they were referring back to this event that happened. Were any of them there? I don't think any of them were there. But they got word that Christ spent 2 days in Sychar, where the Samaritans were, and witnessed and preached to the Samaritans. And according to Scripture, many of them got saved. Many of them believed in God, all because of that one woman and what she said. She came back and told, you've got to come hear this guy. He's preached. He said things I've never heard before. You need to come see what he's all about. And he changed the lives of a lot of people. The Pharisees heard about this. They didn't like it. So they accused him of being a lover or being a Samaritan, which was a very big, a shameful thing to say, almost a racial slur. If you would, that's what we would say today. It would be a racial slur towards Christ, calling him a Samaritan. And then they said he's possessed with a devil, which is also a very horrible thing to say about someone. And this shows the depth, either one, of their ignorance right here. They were calling him or accusing him of not only a racial thing, but of being possessed by a devil. That's not a step you want to take lightly. You don't go now. There are churches that'll go around preaching. They'll call people out of the audience and say you're possessed with the devil. We need to get the devil out of you. All right, I'm not for that. You say, well, are people demon possessed today? I believe they very much can be, and are. You say, well, how can you tell? Well, sometimes you can tell. Sometimes you think when your children are going through that wonderful age of 2 to 3 years old that they're devil incarnate. But not Maddie. Maddie's been perfect. When she was that age, we might have an exorcism for Maddie to get her through her teen years. I'm just kidding, Maddie. In fact, I was talking to my wife the other day about Maddie because I won't say she got in trouble, but she did something she shouldn't have done. And my wife's like, you need to punish her. I was like, are you serious? Because when I look at Maddie, I don't see the Maddie that you see. I see my little Maddie, little baby girl Maddie, who never got in trouble from Daddy because she knew how to melt Daddy's heart. And she still does because that's the way I see her. That's why she's not dating anybody ever, and she will not get married until I'm long dead. Even then, I may come back and have issue with it. But we got way off track. But anyway, this is showing They told him he was possessed of a devil. And any little boy that wants to try to date my daughter, they're going to probably be demon possessed, and I'll have to, we'll have to get rid of them. Huh? I don't know. But we're getting there. I've only got like 3 points, and Brother Russ said he didn't care if we preached an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, so we're just going to go for it. But to call someone demon possessed, that we talked about that. How can you tell today? Sometimes you can, many times you can't. In Scripture we read there were many signs of demon possession. Christ would come. In fact, I was just reading the passage recently of the man in the tombs of the Gadarenes, where Christ came. All he did was approach the man, didn't speak to him, didn't do anything, and the demonic activity was so powerful, they recognized Jesus and said, "What have we to do with you? We don't want you. We don't want anything to do with you. Please leave us alone." And if I would have walked up, they wouldn't have said that to me, but they saw Jesus coming and they dealt with it. You say, all these preachers on TV, are they really casting out demons? I kind of doubt it. We do not have authority over demonic activity. A lot of preachers claim they can tell demons what to do. God deals with that. Christ deals with it. Now, in the Scripture, we see some of the apostles and prophets that they were able to cast out demons, but they didn't do it of their own power. They did it through the power of Jesus Christ. They didn't throw holy water on them. They didn't, burn them with a cross, anything like that. It was through the power of God. And even Christ said to the disciples, sometimes, you can't do the works that you're supposed to do, because sometimes it comes through prayer and fasting and a deep relationship with God. We're not casting out demons this morning. But in this time, it was very prevalent. Remember what society was like. You got to put yourself in that mindset. They were under Roman rule. Romans were very pagan, worshiped many gods, involved in a lot of immoral, demonic activity at this time when Christ came. So Satan pretty much had control of anything he wanted when this was written, when this was going on. And we look at our country today, we can see something very similar. You say, well, are all these people demon possessed? I think there probably are. If they're not possessed, I think Satan is having a heyday, using them for his desire. Because if you're not allowing God to use you, Satan is all for that. He would just assume, even if you're a Christian and you're not doing what you're supposed to do, Satan loves that too, because then you're just hurting the cause of Christ, not helping. And so they called Christ demon-possessed, and this wasn't the first time. They referred to it several times, and he's always pushed them away and said, no, that you're not making any sense. But he goes to them. In fact, if anything, to call the works of God demonic is probably the ultimate blasphemy. These are the religious leaders of the time, and they're calling Jesus Christ himself a demon-possessed person. That's serious, and I think I don't know how he restrained himself at that point. I think him knowing that his time was limited was probably the only thing that restrained him from just going off on the Pharisees at this point, because this was not only that they cast a racial slur at him, now they're telling him he's demon-possessed. Unbelievably, it just wasn't right. It was about as low as they could sink. So they were ignorant of his character. And in fact, let's read the verses there, 49. Jesus answered, I have not a devil, and I honor my Father, and ye do dishonor me, and I seek not my own glory. There's one that seeketh and judgeth. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Then said the Jews unto him, now we know that thou hast the devil, because Abraham is dead, and the prophets, and thou sayest, if a man keep my saying, he shall never taste of death. So he said, okay, now we know for sure you're demon-possessed, because you're saying if somebody believes on you, they'll never see death. But what about Abraham? What about the prophets? What about all these people we've known for so many years? They've all died, but they said they trusted in God. And you claim to be God, so obviously you're not, because they saw death. So you're a liar, or you must be demon-possessed. They didn't understand the God that they were talking about. They could not comprehend. They were ignorant of his character, of what his essence was, what he really was. So they were ignorant. Look at the next one, ignorance of his greatness. Verse 53, art thou greater than our father Abraham, which is dead, and the prophets are dead? Whom makest thou thyself? And then Jesus answered, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing, which is what the Pharisees would do. They would honor themselves. They would lift themselves up. But it was hollow. It was empty. But he said, if I honor myself, it's nothing. It is my Father, capital F, that honoreth me, of whom you say that he is your God. So he's saying, the only honor I have is the honor that my Father, the Father that you are supposed to have worshipped, or who you represent, that's the one who's bestowed honor on me. And you claim to worship this same God. Obviously, it's not. You're worshiping something else. Your honor is not real. They were ignorant of his greatness. Verse 55, yet ye have not known him, but I know him. And if I should say I know him not, I shall be a liar like unto you. That's some harsh language. Christ is now coming right back at him and saying, if I say the honor's mine and the Father's not honoring me, if God's not on me, God's not the one that sent me, then guess what, guys? I'm a liar just like you. No different than you. He calls them to their face liars. And he says, but I know him and keep his saying. That's one of those comments because the Pharisees knew it was true. He says, I know him and I keep his saying. Everybody around heard this, not just the Pharisees, because everybody around knew the Pharisees. They said one thing, but they did the other. They claimed to be the representation of God or God's messengers, and they would preach one thing in the temple, but they didn't live it outside. So Christ was saying, hey guys, I know this God, and I obey him. I do what he says. And that hit hard. I mean, that was an arrow to the heart for the Pharisees because they knew inside that he was right. That they were good on the outside, but they didn't necessarily follow the commandments of God. Christ isn't wasting words. He says, verse 56, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. This is where it gets fun. And we only have a couple verses left. You say, oh, surely it can't be that long. Buckle up. They were not only ignorant of his greatness, they were ignorant of his eternality. Say, what's that mean? Because he said, in that last verse we read, he said, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Well, now they think he's just lost his mind. How many years had it been since Abraham had been around? Anybody have a clue? 2,000 years since Abraham. And so verse 57, then said the Jews unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? They were thinking in earthly aspect. They're saying, you're not even 50. You're not even really a grown man. You don't even have the credentials to even be speaking to us right now. And yet you say you saw Abraham or Abraham saw you 2,000 years ago? Because I'll tell you this, the Jews all knew who Abraham was. They knew the writings of Abraham. They knew the story of Abraham. They knew everything that went on back when Abraham left Ur and went and established the nation of Israel, and the stories of how God miraculously used him and used Joseph to preserve his family. They knew all these stories, and they knew they were passed down through generation after generation after generation. And so he said, you're not even 50, and you say you've seen Abraham? Jesus said unto them, verse 58, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, say those next few words, I am. Grammatically, that makes no sense. That's because, but if you know what that word means, it makes perfect sense. He's referring back to Moses. Remember what God told Moses in the burning bush when he said, go see Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go? And Moses argued with God back and forth, and Moses said, well, who am I supposed to tell him sent me? And what did he tell him? He said, tell him, I am sent you. Those two words had a lot of meaning. And he said, before Abraham was. Now, grammatically, it doesn't make sense. He said, I am. And I heard it put this way. Unbelievers will say this, and scientists will say this. For time to exist, like we live by time, we're restricted by time. Every second that ticks by, we're 1 second closer to the grave. Every day that goes by, we can't get it back. We're restricted. We can only go one direction in time. We're inside time. But scientists will even say this, for time to exist, like we know what time is today, it had to have been created or jump-started by someone who was outside of the bounds or restraints of time. Had to. There's no way somebody inside the restraints of time could have started time like we know it today. So a lot of scientists will agree that they won't say there's a God, but they will admit, okay, something had to jumpstart this whole thing. And so when we see that term I am, what he's saying is, I am at the time of Moses. I am right now with you, but I also right now I'm with Moses. Also right now I am with Abraham. And I'll go a step further. Right now, even though I'm here with you right now, I stepped on my shoe again. I am here right now. I am with Adam. I am creating the universe. All of this is happening for Christ or for God because he lives outside of time. He's not restricted by time. Right now, God is seeing the beginning and he's seeing the end, and he sees everything in the middle. He sees all of it at one time because we look at time this way because we can only see events as they unfold. We can look back in history. We can't go back in history, but we can look back in history and see what's happened in the past. But we can only go forward one step at a time. We can't see beyond the next minute, the next day. We're restricted. But Christ doesn't look at time this way. Christ looks at time this way. He looks at it the opposite because he's outside. He's not restricted by time. In fact, he's not restricted by anything. He created time. And so when he says, I am, he's saying, I'm not only here with you, I'm at creation. I'm with Adam. I'm with Abraham. I'm with Moses and everybody in between. I am. And long after, Pharisees, that you're dead and gone, I am. In other words, he has not stopped being God. He always was God. He is God right now, and he always will be God in the future. In our terms, that's the way we... the human mind can only understand things in reference to time because that's how we measure. You know, we had a birthday party last night for Lee and Maddie. Maddie's too old. Lee is not old enough to get out of the house. But we'll keep Maddie a little bit longer. But we had a birthday. Why did we have a birthday party? We marked the passing of time. My wife sent out great invitations for the party. It was their birth party. A little typo on the invitation there. Instead of birthday party, we had a birth party. Never had one of those before. So if you saw the invitation, read it real close because it's different. But this is what Christ was, and this is how he shut down the Pharisees. He said, guys, I am. Because before Abraham was, I am. I was there before that. Before Moses, I was there. Before Adam, I was there. It takes something outside of time to create what we have today. Christ is the I am. If he were to walk in today, he would say, I am is here. And that doesn't make sense grammatically. But spiritually, think of that name for God. What better name could you have for God? In fact, the ultimate name you could have for God would be God, the I am. Because he is, and I don't know if I can, I don't even know if in my mind I could comprehend this saying, much less try to explain it to someone. Even John in the book of Revelation, he couldn't even put it all together. He couldn't even explain everything because he couldn't put into words what he was seeing in the book of Revelation. I am. Pharisees, all these arguments you've given to me, we're going to put a stop to it right here. Before Abraham, before Moses, before all this, I am. They knew what that saying meant. They may not have wanted to admit to it, but they knew what it meant. I am. And then after that, verse 58, Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. But then look at that last verse. Then took they up stones to cast at him, because to them this was the ultimate blasphemy. He was now claiming to be God in flesh. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. And I just want to read the next few words because it's going to set up next week. Chapter 9, and as Jesus passed by. Next week we're going to talk about when Jesus passes by. Good things happen. But I want to finish this thought. The outcome of their ignorance. I don't know if we have one more slide yet. We have one more. The outcome of their ignorance. Jesus shut it down by saying, I am. He mixed the past and present tense. Doesn't make sense to us, but they knew. When he was saying that he used this answer, he said, no matter what, I've always been, I always am, and I always will be, all wrapped into one. We must realize that with God there is no time. And now he'd done it officially in front of all these witnesses, claimed that he was God. This was something that he had alluded to many times, but there was no taking this back. He said, I am God. And the conclusion here, look at this. The same is true today. Unbelievers will ridicule, they'll mock the truth. You say, what's the truth? It's this book. Unbelievers will ridicule, they'll mock, they'll yell, they'll holler, they'll scream. Anybody who stands for Christ. Now, in our country today, there is a spiritual awakening going on. Is it real? Is it temporary? We'll see. There's people today that purport or they claim to be wise. They claim to be the ones, the educated, the elite. And they look at us and they accuse Christians, they accuse us of being the ones who are ignorant. But they've got it backwards. They say, we oppose progress. Well, in some cases, yeah, we do oppose progress, as far as we think of politically speaking. But in reality, the opposite's true. They reject and they blaspheme the one true God. But yet they claim that we're the ones that are in darkness. We're the ones in bondage. I don't know about you. The freedom you have in Christ is unlike anything you'll find in the world. So what are you talking about, freedom in Christ? I'll tell you, here's what's bondage. Here's what bondage is, being in bondage to sin. That puts you in bondage. I don't know about you. I go to bed at night. I'm free. I don't have to worry about a policeman knocking on my door, coming to arrest me because I did something wrong. I don't have to worry about my wife finding something out about me because I've been keeping secrets from her and living a double life. I don't have to worry about that, because there's freedom. If we I don't know, we can't be perfect. Maybe Brother Russ is the only one in here. It could be. But there's freedom. And I'll close with a good illustration. Well, at the ranch, we brought in a bunch of goats out there at one point. We put up goat fence. I hate goats now. I didn't hate them so much then. I hate them now. But we got some goats, so we had to find a way to keep them corralled. Put in some fence, they'd jump over it. We electrified it, they still jumped over it. We finally got it. But inside the fence where the goats were at, they had all the stuff they wanted to eat. Their feed was there. They had woods. They could go eat anything they wanted. They could run. They had plenty of room to move around. They had things to climb on, things to jump on. They could do anything they wanted. But you know what they wanted? To get outside the fence. Inside the fence, there was safety. Inside the fence, they didn't have to worry about a predator. They didn't have to worry about somebody coming to kill them or haul them off somewhere else or being away from their family of goats, if they have a family. Inside the fence, there was safety. They were looking at that fence as, okay, I'm in bondage. I want to be free from this fence. But they're not realizing being free from that fence meant they were going to be in a lot more trouble than they were if they were inside the fence. We can look at the Bible two different ways. We can look at it as a fence, where if we stay inside that fence, we're going to be happy. We've got everything we need. We don't need anything else. We're protected inside this book. But if we want to stray outside that fence, guess what? That's when we become entangled in the things of the world that don't matter. That's what brings bondage. That's what will get to us. Now, I said I want to do something a little bit different. I want to open our altars here in just a minute because I think we need to spend some time in prayer. And Miss Barb, I know you're hurting. If you don't want to come to the altar, don't come and hurt yourself. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to come around the altar today and pray not just for our church, but for our community, for our country, that God will open eyes, that this movement that's moving through our country today and through the world, that it will last, that it's real, and that people will wake up from the ignorance all around them. I don't know about you. I'm ignorant about a lot of things, but I'm glad I'm not ignorant to the things of God. Amen. Our world needs God. Let me rephrase. Our world needs the real God, not the God of a movement or a religion or a church. They need the one true God. We need the one true God. And I'd like us, if you can't and are feeling comfortable, that's fine. I'd like us to come to this altar this morning and spend a few minutes and pray for our church, pray for our community, our country, and for what's going on right now. Pray that we'll stay in the fence. We'll pray that God will deliver people from the bondage of sin, turn their hearts towards Him, because ultimately that's what it is. We've got a world full of Pharisees. We know we have a lot of them. We need to pray that God will open eyes and that He will guard our hearts. I don't want to jump outside the fence. I want to stay inside that fence, and I want to be happy and not have to worry about anything going on outside the fence because I know God will protect us. Say, well, what about if a fox gets in the fence or a wolf comes in? God will deal with it. God will take care of it. He'll protect us. Lee, you can pause that live stream or stop it.